The best way to learn a new language is through immersion. For the rest of us, there's the second best way to learn a language, which is Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Babbel's speech recognition technology is like having a fluent tutor with you all the time. It's been super helpful in improving my German pronunciation and accent. Babbel offers conversation-based learning with science-backed cognitive tools like spaced repetition. Here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/weirdest. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/weirdest. Spelled BABBEL.com/weirdest. Rules and restrictions may apply. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Therapy is a great way to avoid bottling up your petty grievances and incandescent rage and everything in between. My therapist is fantastic at helping me unpack the stuff that's just like really frosting my flakes, you know? If you're interested in therapy and you just don't know how to get started, you might consider checking out BetterHelp. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire and you'll get matched with a therapist. If they're not a good fit, you can switch at any time for no additional cost. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/weirdest today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/weirdest. At Popular Science, we report and write dozens of science and tech stories every week. And while most of the stuff we stumble across makes it into our articles, we also find plenty of weird facts that we just keep around the office. So we figured, why not share those with you? Welcome to The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week from the editors of Popular Science. I'm Rachel Feltman.
I'm Amanda Reed.
And I'm Erica Brzozowski.
Erica, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So I am a sociolinguist. I got my doctorate in English, specializing in sociolinguistics. I'm the host of Other Words, a PBS digital series about all things language and linguistics, which you can find on YouTube or on the PBS website, pbs.org. You can also find me over at Crash Course, where I host a crash course called How to College, which breaks down the higher education process from thinking about applying to graduating out into the real world.
That's
I am
awesome.
also currently, thank you. I'm also currently writing a pop linguistics about literacy. And most relevant to this podcast, my favorite thing, besides before and after photos and interspecies animal friendships, is learning stuff. So I'm incredibly excited to be here to share my little weird tidbit and also to learn weird stuff from y'all.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, listen, this is the place to be if you love to learn weird stuff. Yeah, I mean, your PBS show is great, and I also love the concept of the crash course you do. It's such a good idea because I feel like, you know, I came from a background where there was lots of support about the idea of going to college, and it was still such a mysterious, arcane, and like confusing process.
Harrowing sometimes.
Yeah,
even.
harrowing. Yeah, absolutely. Well,
I also wish that I had more information because, like, when I was applying to college, my parents were like, only apply in state. And I live in Pennsylvania, which is among, like, one of the most, like, a lot of colleges, even the public ones in Pennsylvania can be
state.
Yeah.
Very expensive.
Very expensive, very collegiate. Definitely a lot of like liberal arts, small college vibes, which I love the vibe, don't love the price tag on them. And my favorite part was me going, I want to be a theater critic, and I want to go into the very, very profitable field of theater criticism. Let me go to the University of Pittsburgh, a place without a formal journalism program, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Hail to Pitt. It's how I met Jess.
Well, I love that that's talking about Jess. And also, one of these days, I'm going to have to ask you more about your origin story as an aspiring theater critic, because I had no idea and lots to discuss. But for now, let's get into the show.
But for now.
So on the weirdest thing I learned this week, we start by offering up a little tease that we found in the course of reading, writing, reporting, etc., and decide which one we just absolutely have to hear more about first. Then once we've all had time to spin our little science yarns, we reconvene and decide what the weirdest thing we learned this week actually was. I should probably rewrite that intro. We don't do that anymore. Even when I say it's like, we do it in a fun way and the points don't matter, we don't even really do that anymore. We just kind of go, isn't it nice that we just had this conversation? Amanda, what's your tease?
Yeah. So my tease is birds are breaking the gender binary.
Oh, I love that.
I'm excited.
I wrote a whole book about not literally that, but there were some queer birds in there. In my book, Been There, Done That, A Rousing History of Sex. Buy it. My tease is that even if you can't hear it, a frog may be screaming at you.
Nice.
Erica, what's your tease?
Mine kind of follows that thread a little bit. So mushrooms don't seem like a particularly talkative bunch, but one scientist claims that they might have been chit-chatting this whole time to the tune of up to 50 different words.
Wow. Okay.
Gossiping mushrooms.
Yeah, mushrooms, they look like they'd be gossipy. That's definitely the vibe. Let's see. I would love to start with Amanda. Why don't you tell us about these binary breaking birds?
Yes, absolutely. So Hamish Spencer, zoologist and distinguished professor at the University of Otago, was vacationing in Colombia when ornithologist John Murillo pointed out an interesting bird perched on a feeding station at a nature reserve. The bird in question was a green honeycreeper, but it didn't look like any old, basic honeycreeper. The right half of the bird was blue, resembling males of the species, and the left half was green, which is usually seen in females. This special honeycreeper is the second bird of its species in history to display bilateral gynandromorphism, a long word, a trait where animals present with both male and female characteristics in species that usually have distinct sexes. It's also the first time this phenomenon has happened in 100 years. This honeycreeper is a history-making bird and also
Love that.
a social groundbreaking magical bird. However, other birds have displayed bilateral gynandromorphism, so this honeycreeper is not alone. In 2019, a cardinal with male and female plumage was spotted in Erie, Pennsylvania. Like the honeycreeper, half of the bird was bright red, like male cardinals, while the other half was beige, like female cardinals. So also a fact within my fun fact, if you ever see a holiday little painting or advertisement where it's two bright red birds carrying a wreath and they work together to hang that wreath up on the front door, congratulations. It's just two dudes helping each other out.
I love
being
it.
friends. They were roommates.
And they were roommates. Exactly.
So this non-binary icon also has a boyfriend and could potentially reproduce since the bird's female plumage is on its left side and only the left ovary is functional in female cardinals.
Oh,
And is there something with
interesting.
like their cloaca? I don't know. This is your expertise, right, Rachel?
Yeah. Good question. I have no idea what's going on with the cloaca. Unfortunately, I'm not a cloaca expert.
Well, so the thing about it is that
Rachel is.
Yeah, alas, not a full-on cloaca expert, but I do know from my discussion in my book about how few birds have anything resembling a penis, like any sort of extruding member. So much worse than just a penis. Anyway, but the outer appearance would be identical. And some birds then have it's sort of just a question of whether stuff
kind of oozes out of the cloaca or is meant to ooze into the cloaca, because the cloaca is an all-purpose exit from the body, you know. So it's
nice.
And entrance too, apparently.
Yeah. It can be a two-way shoot, and they've only got the one. So anyway, I don't know what specifically a cardinal cloaca is like, but the differences between one in a male and female bird probably less distinct than you might realize if you're sort of working from the very like human-centric frame of reference for how sexual dimorphism works.
Nice. Thank you, Rachel.
You're so welcome.
Back to birds. In 2020, the Carnegie Museum of Natural History, Pittsburgh mentioned, I wish there was like a Pittsburgh mentioned like sound, like a hip hop air horn, because I love Pittsburgh mentioned, and it's just like a dude with a very Yinzer accent. Because I love, even though I'm not from Pittsburgh, I'm more so a Pittsburgh transplant, but I love finding ways to issue Pittsburgh into anything.
Oh,
anyway,
Pittsburghese is a whole linguistic field. The people are obsessed.
I was actually going to ask you about that because I too love Pittsburghese. So anyway, back to birds part 2. The Carnegie Museum of Natural History found a gynandromorphic rose-breasted grosbeak that displayed male plumage on the right, just like our good friend the honeycreeper, and female plumage on the left. So this particular bird has pink wing pits and breast spot found in males, and the female, it has the yellow wing pits and browner wings on its left side. So right pinker, darker feathers, left yellow, browner wings.
I have 2 questions if I can interrupt.
Yes.
1, is a wing pit like an armpit? Because I've just never heard that terminology
Yeah.
before. Okay, so it's like the underside of the wing.
So if you picture like a bird with its wings spread, it's like the underside of the wing.
Okay, so that's question number 1. Question number 2,
Yes.
because there's a lot of right and left going on. Were they all the same? So were all the lefts male and or I think it's the other way around, all the rights female and all the lefts male? I don't even know what you just said.
That is a very good question. So at least with the honeycreeper and the grosbeak, it was male right, female left, and on the cardinal, it appears that the female was on the right and the male was on the left. I'm looking at a picture of this wonderful magic bird. Yeah, it's female on the right, male on the left. And that's like, if you're just like looking at the bird straight on using like my right.
Theater. The opposite of theater.
Yes. Theater right. Listeners, if you are at home, the magic of Google will have pictures linked in the description, or at least I will find the pictures to add, because it's very, very cool. And it's literally like a right down the middle split.
Yeah. Well, and I know that every once in a while, pictures go around of lobsters that are split this way, and it's very striking. Then they look like one side is cooked and the other isn't.
The other side, yeah. So speaking of lobsters, moths, and spiders can be gynandromorphs, but it's rarer among birds. And outside of gynandromorphs, there are a lot of other queer animals. So, for example, clownfish. When a female clownfish dies, the male changes its sex to become female. There is a group of, or a lizard, that is known as the leaping lesbian lizard.
Iconic name.
Yes.
Yeah. And
so Miss Hannigan's best line in Annie.
Yeah.
Leaping lesbian.
Yeah. So this lizard mates, lay eggs, and reproduces like all other lizards, but it's the species, all of the species are female.
This
Oh,
sounds
yeah.
like
Is that the
Jurassic
one that,
Park.
yeah. Is that the one that does kleptogenesis? Yeah. I've talked about them before. They it's like the whole species is female and they just kind of grab genes from like random males, but it's not like the male is providing 50% of the genetic information. It's more like they like get a charcuterie board of potential male genes and grab a few of them. It's very wild.
Yeah. So these birds and these animals as a whole are proof that considering sex as a biological binary is reductive. And if you ever meet a person who is complaining and they're like, that stuff's not natural, you can just say, well, look at these birds, look at this clownfish, look at these lesbian lizards. And know that nature, pretty queer.
Yeah. Well, even, I make this point in my book that, intersex conditions in humans it's not that they're common, but they're like not nearly rare enough to be treated as like so outside the way that like sex works for the species. It's not like this is a 1 in a million thing. It's more like a 1 in several hundred to several thousand thing. And
that frequent. Wow.
Yeah. I think the estimates are like they vary a lot, but I think one reasonably conservative estimate is like 1 in 2,000. And that's like every possible sort of intersex condition, many of which don't really cause like necessarily noticeable physiological or morphological changes. And obviously there's a huge spectrum of, how that can impact both a person's like medical needs and lived experience. But yeah, like broadly speaking, they are pretty common variations in, how humans come out. And I love that there are animals where it's like it's just so standard, like with clownfish, where they literally are like,
I mean, Finding Nemo, right?
Yeah.
Nemo's dad, or actually his mom.
Yeah. I did a TikTok video once about how if, Finding Nemo had been scientifically accurate, it would have started with a sex change. And I got people really did not like that video. I actually took it down because not that I cared what those people thought, but I was like, this is gonna get me put on like libs of TikTok, and I'm just like not. That's not what I'm here for today. But it's true. Look it up. Awesome. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and then we'll be back with some more facts.
The best way to learn a new language is through immersion, living where the language is spoken and using it every day. But jetting off to a foreign country just because we want to learn the language isn't an option for most of us. If that is like a casual option for you, I'm sorry to say you missed my birthday, but there's still time to make it up to me. Anyway, for the rest of us, there's the second best way to learn a language, which is Babbel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Babbel's speech recognition technology is like having a fluent tutor with you all the time. It's been super helpful in improving my German pronunciation and accent. It's almost as good as asking my German husband, and Babbel doesn't make a face that goes, oh my god, how adorable, every time I say a word in German, which is, sometimes nice and definitely meant well, but just not always super helpful, not always the vibe I'm looking for. I'm trying to be a serious scholar. Babbel offers conversation-based learning with science-backed cognitive tools like spaced repetition. Its interactive lessons are created by real language teachers and voiced by actual native speakers. Here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/weirdest. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/weirdest, spelled BABBEL.com/weirdest. Rules and restrictions may apply. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. So, this script says I'm supposed to talk about something that I really need to get off my chest, but I'm not going to do that because That's literally what I have therapy for. I mean, no offense, I'm sure you're a fantastic listener, but this is a podcast about like poop and weird science and stuff. And I just feel like it would be a real pivot for me to start unloading all my secret sources of stress on you during the commercial break. The point is that therapy is a great way to avoid bottling up your petty grievances and incandescent rage and everything in between. My therapist is fantastic at helping me unpack the stuff that's just like really frosting my flakes, you know? If you're interested in therapy and you just don't know how to get started, you might consider checking out BetterHelp. It's all online, so you can make it work with any schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire and you'll get matched with a therapist. If they're not a good fit, you can switch at any time for no additional cost. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/weirdest today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/weirdest.
Okay, we're back, and I'm going to talk about screaming frogs. we had lesbian lizards. Now we have screaming frogs. So there's this new study out that says that there are frogs that scream violently to ward off predators, but they do it at frequencies we can't hear. And I will pause to say, common frogs do scream. There are frogs, I learned while researching this, there are frogs that scream at frequencies we can hear. If you Google this, you will find many videos of people being like, why is this frog screaming? And the answer is, you're freaking it out. Stop doing whatever you're doing. But what's cool about this study is that, you know, it's looking at a frog that is using ultrasonic frequencies. And that opens a lot of questions to like why that we can't actually answer yet, but it's just a really fascinating thing to look at and think about. And then also, because I have such a short fact today, I'm going to do a little quiz with some unexpected animal noises. So we'll see how that goes. So this is the litter leaf frog, also known as the clay rubber frog. Unsurprisingly, there are several frogs called like leaf frog or litter leaf frog because it's a really good strategy to look like a dead leaf on the ground when you're a frog. But these are the most common, or one of the most common species in the Brazilian rainforest. They grow to be about 2.5 inches long at most. And they're real cute. And I will post pictures on PopSci.com/weird. And this study found that they can emit a distress call that is in the inaudible ultrasound band. So humans can hear at the highest frequency we can hear is 20,000 hertz, or 20 kilohertz. And this is a sound that goes from 20 kilohertz to 44 kilohertz. So we cannot hear it, no matter how young and fresh your ears are. And so, who is this for? Not for humans, clearly. But what's interesting is that they're not sure whether this is meant directly to scare predators or if it could be for something a little more interesting. So they know that there are bats and rodents and small primates who make and hear sounds at this frequency. So it's possible that this is this broad distress call that's meant to just freak out as many of those animals as possible. And they do also, they go back and forth between this sound and one that is at a lower frequency that is audible to humans. So they're maybe they're just covering all their bases. They're first making this lower sound, then this higher sound to just again, whatever predators are out there, freak them out. But they also think that maybe the scream is meant to attract birds to then attack the predator that's threatening them. Maybe they're trying to get an owl to come eat a snake or something. We don't know. They're going to do some more research on it. What's also fun about this is that it's a very obviously distress call because they have this stance they go into. They raise up the front of their body, sort of they're coming up into down dog, little sphinx posy. if you will. And then they open their mouths really wide and they jerk their head up backwards, like as if they're like roaring, like, and the frog looks like I am about to scream. But then they close their mouth a little bit, and that's when they make a noise that we can hear. And then it goes to a noise we can't hear. So it's really funny because you look at this frog and you're like, oh my gosh, that frog is about to scream, and then you don't hear anything because it's too high.
It gives me like whistle tone, or like that noise that people use to break glass, but they're like, we're going even higher.
Yeah, totally,
Yes.
totally. It's like the sound that they play to annoy teenagers and get them to leave a space, but higher than that. And this isn't the first time that scientists have recorded an amphibian using ultrasound calls. There are 3 Asian species that do. But in that case, it's pretty clear that they're using it to communicate with each other. And so this is the first time that we've seen a frog making ultrasonic calls, to communicate a message to a different animal. And yeah, I just love it. It also reminded me of a story I covered ages ago, back in 2015, that was about mice song, because mice do sing. That wasn't what was new in this 2015 study. We already knew that mice sing. It's just that we can't hear it. It's really high pitched. But this study in 2015 actually analyzed mouse song, which had kind of been categorized up until then as just like the sort of stereotypical squeaky sounds, just higher than we can hear. But they analyzed them and were like, oh, these are actually like pretty complex songs, like similar to bird song. Not quite as complex, but like clearly the male mice were like putting effort into like composing their little mouse songs for the ladies.
Okay. All right, mouse. All
yeah.
right, mice.
And what was fun about it is that they would put in, the songs would be louder and more complex when they didn't see a female. And then when they did, they would kind of like chill out a little bit. So they were basically sort of
Playing
like,
it cool.
Yeah. they
Wow.
were like putting a lot of effort into like, are there any ladies present? I am great.
All the ladies
And then-
in the room.
Exactly, yeah. And then once, their milkshake brought all the girls to the yard, they would be like, okay, now I'm going to save some energy for actually like hopefully having sex. I'm not going to keep singing my heart out. She's already here, so now I just need to sort of like maintain the vibe. And yeah, I loved that the point of the study was talking about, the surprising complexity of mouse songs. And I was like, mice sing? What? And it's just a reminder that like, there's this whole sonic world that we don't experience and that many animals don't experience. And that, there are things our senses don't pick up visually, auditorially. Not everything in the world has been made for us to experience. And, sometimes that can be a little frustrating. Everybody wishes they could like see as many colors as like a mantis shrimp or whatever. But also it's kind of awesome because it means like we can just kind of imagine all of this sensory input out in the world that other creatures get to experience. That's my fact. Like I said, it's a short one today. So now I'm going to unplug my headphones so that I can play these sounds for you. And it's just, I'm going to play a series of animal sounds that I thought were surprising and that maybe are in a roundup from the World Animal Protection Organization in Australia, also saying that they're surprising. And
Are they Australian animals, or are they just general animals?
Great question. These are not all Australian animals. I was like, can I confidently say that? Yes, these are not all Australian animals. They were just having fun over there at this Australian organization. But
Having fun down under.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we'll see if you can guess some of these animals. Can you hear it? No.
Yeah.
It's definitely surprising.
Any idea what that animal was?
For some reason, top of my head, guinea pig.
Baby rhino. So
Oh, okay.
I would not have guessed baby rhino.
basically the same.
I personally would not have guessed baby rhino. So good on me for being brave.
I was guessing something in the water, so I don't, I hadn't formulated an animal yet.
I mean, listen, they're surprising. So
I'm
I'm aiming to stump
surprised.
you. Okay, here's another one.
That's giving more pig-like, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not
I'll
surprising yet.
Yeah, I'll
I
give you
definitely
a
got pig.
clue that it's a mating call specifically.
Okay. I'm going to say koala.
You are correct.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Amanda knows what a horny koala sounds like. No shame. Listen.
No shame.
Okay, here's one that really surprised me. I was shocked.
Definitely sounds more chirpy. I'm going to say a katydid.
I'm going to go with a wallaby.
It was a cheetah.
I have heard that they
okay, I
chirp.
could see that.
Adorable chirping. Okay, let's see. I have a couple more. That was a very, very shofar, like very, very trumpety.
It sounds like a musical instrument, yeah. In the
Yeah.
woods, there should be like some, I don't know, mountains with mist. I was trying to think of what that animal could be, and I was like, the first thing came up was lorax, but that's not a real thing. And then I was like, local. I'm like, that's a fruit. So I was like, lemur. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, I think I'm going to also go with lemur. I think it's some sort of like monkey adjacent animal.
Great guess. It was, however, an elk.
Ah, okay.
An elk call. Okay.
I would have never guessed.
You're 1 for 4 though, so that's basically an A.
25%, baby.
Yeah, listen, we're grading on a curve, so
Yeah.
Amanda gets an A. Yeah, the elks are apparently like the boogie woogie bugle boys of the woods. Yeah, anyway, I will link to some more surprising animal sounds probably on my Patreon, because now every week, in addition to sort of the like links for my stories, I also do sort of like a random run of related or not related, but sort of this made me think of X, Y, and Z facts. So folks should check that out. And I bet this one's going to be a really fun one, because what will screaming frogs make me think of? Probably a lot of weird stuff. So yeah, that's my fact today. Short and sweet one. We'll be back after the break with one more fact. This episode is brought to you by Honeylove. Summer is fast approaching, and according to the ad copy in front of me, that apparently means people need new shapewear because they're like going out to more parties or whatever. Honestly, I can't relate. It's like 65 degrees out right now, and I already feel like I'm wilting. Luckily, our sponsor Honeylove has me covered whether I'm trying to look like Jessica Rabbit or trying to look like some kind of sofa gremlin. And if I have no choice but to go out looking presentable, Honeylove's surprisingly comfortable shapewear is breathable enough to keep me from literally melting on my way to the function. For a limited time only, you can get Honeylove on sale. Get 20% off your entire order with our exclusive link, honeylove.com/weirdest. Support our show and check them out at honeylove.com/weirdest. Most shapewear is just an absolute no-go for me in the summer. I mean, who wants to feel like their underwear is strangling them when it's already disgusting outside? And to what end? To have my bodacious bod squished into one uniform lump of sweaty flesh? No. So when I'm looking for underwear that smooths and shapes without making me feel like a pig in a blanket, I reach for Honeylove. Honeylove's Superpower Short has targeted compression technology and booty lifting capabilities, so it respects your already amazing silhouette while giving it just, a little hint of wow factor. If, like me, you're hoping your summer plans are a little chiller than all that,
Honeylove also has incredibly comfy bras, tanks, and leggings for everyday support. Treat yourself to the best bras and shapewear on the market and save 20% off at honeylove.com/weirdest. Use our exclusive link to get 20% off, honeylove.com/weirdest. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. The summer vibes are just getting started, honeys. Shape your life with Honeylove.
Okay, we're back. And Erica, tell me about what mushrooms have been chatting about. Why they've been leaving me out of the hot goss.
Are they talking about me?
We'll find out. Ooh. So I stumbled across my weird thing via an email from my dad with the all caps heading, fungal language. Full body of the email was, here is a link to an article about the language of mushrooms with a link. So I'm like, all right, as a linguist and a lover of mushrooms, immediately I am intrigued, but also absolutely skeptical. Because I'm like, okay, After all, language is kind of one of the main things that separates us from, or if you're particularly humanist, elevates us above the other creatures on Earth. And there's no way that mushrooms have developed a system of communication using words with structured rules, grammar to express themselves, right? Right? Well, let me tell ya. So first I want to clarify the difference between mushrooms and fungi, which I was kind of just using synonymously prior to right now. So all mushrooms are fungi, but not all fungi are mushrooms, much like how all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. So mushrooms are the fruiting bodies of certain kinds of fungi. Think like cute little toadstools or the button, cremini, and portobello mushrooms you find at the store, which, fun fact, shockingly enough, are actually all the same kind of mushroom. Just
It's true.
Yeah, at different stages of maturity. I was flabbergasted when I found that out.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled, honestly. And also, so I love mushrooms. I did some mycology back in college, and my husband hates mushrooms. And recently he became open to the idea that maybe he just dislikes that one species of mushroom. So he's been a real champ about trying various...
A real champignon?
Exactly. And sure enough, while he has not liked every mushroom he's tried, there have been, little white cap mushrooms that he has enjoyed. So listeners, if you're like, ugh, mushrooms are gross, maybe just try some weirder mushrooms.
Absolutely. Puffball mushrooms, those like oyster mushrooms are delightful. I love a good enoki mushroom, which we'll talk more about later. Love it all. But those toadstools, just as a caveat for any listeners, don't eat any mushrooms in the forest unless you're absolutely sure they're not poisonous. In the words of, the Black Forager, Alexis Nicole Nelson, happy snacking and don't die. Not my fault. If you don't know what a mushroom is, don't look to me.
Yeah. Don't try to eat one, especially if it looks like the ones that you buy at the store, because those are the hardest mushrooms to forage safely. There's so many poisonous mushrooms that look just like the ones you eat at the store. Okay.
Exactly. So might I suggest
PSA?
Yeah.
Might I suggest foraging for black trumpets, because nothing poisonous looks like them. That's the only one that I've ever foraged successfully. There's some chanterelles too, but a little sus.
Yeah, oysters are pretty, like, there are things that might not taste good that could look like an oyster mushroom, but you're very unlikely, at least in the northeastern U.S., which is where my knowledge is, to die trying to eat an oyster mushroom. The toad, anything shaped like a toadstool is harder. You need to get some learning before you try to pick those and eat them.
And if it looks like a stereotypical, like the pretty mushroom with the dots, no, that's a hard no.
No. Oh yeah, you'll have a really bad trip. You vomit a lot. Don't do that.
But yeah, black trumpets grow in Maine and in parts of New England, so recommend. They're delicious. Okay, so anyway, back to my fun fact, weird story. So all mushrooms are fungi, but not all fungi are mushrooms. Fungi also includes mold and yeast and mildew, but we're going to focus on the more mushroomy type right now, the fruiting bodies that we can see. The question is, can they talk? So this professor of unconventional computing, Andrew Adamatsky of the University of the West of England, happens to think so. And that is a field of study I literally never heard of until yesterday.
It
But I gotta say, mushrooms absolutely seem like an unconventional thing to analyze if you're not a mycologist. So it seems on brand just based on, I didn't research him personally, but like based on his field of study. So prior research has found that fungi transmit electrical impulses through these long underground structures of thread-like filaments called hyphae, which together form a web called a mycelium, which links fungal colonies within the soil, much like how nervous systems work in humans, animals, vertebrates in general, right? So mushrooms don't have nervous systems, but they have this network. And taken together, the mycelium composes what is called the mycorrhizal network, which connects plants together to share resources and communicate. It's sometimes called the Wood Wide Web, which I just love.
Oh, that's
so
good.
cute.
That's a good pun.
Genius. So anyway, for this particular study, Adamatsky looked at 4 species of fungi. Delicious enoki mushrooms. Big fan. Split gill, ghost, and caterpillar fungi. I cannot speak to the edibility, not the right word, of all of these. Only enoki. The rest of them, it could be poisonous for all I know, but enoki's good. Okay, so he inserted tiny microelectrodes into substrates colonized by these species or into the fungi themselves and recorded the electrical impulses transmitted. He detected spikes of electrical activity, which, to be fair, if I probably would have an electrical spike too if somebody dared to stab me with some electrodes.
Yeah.
So, well, that's a fair warning here for how the rest of this story goes. So Adamatsky found that these electrical impulses varied by amplitude, frequency, and duration, and some mathematical analyses of the electrical signals identified patterns that he claims bear a striking structural similarity to human speech. He was able to group the electrical activity into spike trains, which is neuroscience speak for a combinatorial sequence of spikes and silences. It's like a digital sequence of information, which you think of like 1 for spike or 0 for no spike, giving you a binary code of 1s and 0s, quantifying someone's response to a stimulus or something in the case of mushrooms. I don't want to anthropomorphize them, even though I do love them.
Yeah.
So there were distinctive rhythmic patterns of electrical signals within the 4 species clustered into trains that represented vocabularies, he's alleging, of up to 50 different words that could be organized into so-called sentences. And if you're curious about how verbose the different species were, the caterpillar fungi showed the lowest average spike frequency, and the enoki apparently had a lot of diverse patterning of electrical activity. I don't know what that means exactly, but the split gills apparently generated the most complex alleged lexicon.
Oh,
what they were
nice.
saying, none of our business. I don't speak mushroom. Yeah. I don't speak fungi, you know? So Adamatsky does admit that the mushrooms might not be saying anything at all since they're electrically charged and getting stabbed with electrically charged things.
They could just be saying "ow" over and over again.
That's my impression. I'm like, like how rude, you know?
Yikes.
Exactly. So, however, because these, quote, spiking events don't appear to be random, he's suggesting that these waves of electrical impulses might be to maintain the fungi's integrity or to indicate presence, like a wolf's howl, which is a wild parallel to make between wolves and these fungi. But, or he's saying that they might be out to report on things going on in other parts of their mycelia. So, the real question, to me at least, is what do other scientists think about this? So much like me, they are skeptical and definitely need more evidence. Turns out other types of pulsing behavior have previously been recorded as the fungi transports nutrients, which might show more about patterns of growth as the fungi forage for food than anything else, really. But I guess I'm a scientist, but I'm a linguist first and foremost. So I was like, what about the linguists? What do the linguists think about this? Because I'm like, language has a lot of different parts that I don't imagine that fungi could do, you know? So an early 2024 paper by Michael Blatt et al., there were many people, in response to Adamatsky's study, basically ripped him a new one. That's the easiest way to say
Dang.
it. Even just the abstract is, you're like, wow. Ooh, okay. So here's the last line of the abstract. I'll read it for you. Here we argue on methodological grounds that the presumption of a fungal language is premature and unsupported by the evidence presented, and the voltage fluctuations he detects are likely to originate as non-biological noise and experimental artifacts, and that the measured electrical patterns show no similarity to any properties of human language. Dang.
Dang,
Rough.
indeed. Wow.
Rough.
Later, they say, quote, Adamatsky provides no support of any kind for the notion that fungi might be using a language. I was like, oh, rough, truly.
I'd have to lie down if I read something
With like a cool
like
cloth
that
over your eyes,
about
or like
me. Yeah.
get into one of those chambers where there's no sensory deprivation chambers because you're like, that was too much
Literally.
sensing.
Like that and a weighted blanket, and then just like leave me be for 20 minutes.
There are so many good quotes in the article. It's kind of an epic takedown, made even better because it's so formal and academic and like, you know, professional, right? There's other line that I loved. And this is all like the things I found on the free version. I was like, I'm not paying for this article. There's a paywall. This is what I saw and what they showed me. So one line that was great was, we find the evidence that fungi communicate via human-like language technically and logically flawed and therefore unconvincing.
Ooh,
Juicy.
unconvincing. Move over the Renata Adler of scrolling on your phone. We have, and of course I'm quoting that one book forum, Lauren Euler review. Move over that particular review. The scientists have been bashing on each other for years.
Oh, it's wonderful. I want to find the article at some point, maybe in a few years when it's free. Okay, so fungi do communicate. There's a whole host of chemicals, nutrients, and as we know, electrical impulses flowing through the mycelium. But is it a language? No. So University of Exeter mycologist Dan Beber, who previously investigated fungal nutrient pulsing, said, perhaps a little savagely, that though interesting, the interpretation as language seems somewhat overenthusiastic and would require far more research and testing of critical hypotheses before we see fungus on Google Translate.
Wow.
That's fair. Tough but fair.
Regardless of their linguistic prowess or lack thereof, mushroom and fungi are awesome. They're these fantastic organisms that deserve much more appreciation both on our plates and in our hearts.
So true. Ugh.
Just interesting little guys.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. They're just little guys.
And they also, like, you know, obviously all of these reviewers are correct in that, like, you know, it's a big leap to say mushrooms are chit-chatting in this fashion. But, like, it's kind of, you know, I think it's one of those things where probably the reason they got so mad about it is that it sort of detracts from the genuinely very awesome stuff about fungi, in that, like, they are very connected on this mycorrhizal network, and, like, this is a way that you know, organisms that are not animals seem to communicate with each other, and also, like, fungi are like, they're, people lump them in with plants, but they're, like, so different from plants. They're more closely related to animals,
and they're a completely different kingdom, like a kingdom of life on Earth.
Yeah. And they, like, they're made of chitin, the same stuff as beetles. Like, they're just wild. And I think it's, you know, I feel like whenever there's a study that, you know, makes too big of a leap for an organism that is genuinely, like, already weird and wild,
Jumping the shark.
Like, yeah, exactly. There's like kind of it's like worse than if it was for, like, a, you know, a boring, well understood organism, because people are like, no, now people are gonna be like, oh, I heard mushrooms don't actually talk to each other. That was debunked. Who cares about mushrooms? No, care about mushrooms. I love that. Yeah, I'm really curious, you know, how do you feel about the research into you know, not just non-human but, like, non-animal communication? Like, I guess I'm just curious, like, how often does it feel relevant to your work?
Well, with my show, in other words, we kind of talk about all things language and linguistics. So it's like, if it's tangentially related, we can talk about it. And then I end up going down, like, multiple rabbit holes, and you're like, Wikipedia, link. And you're like, how did I get to this thing that is seemingly unrelated?
It's like, wait, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon still applies here?
Absolutely. So I do end up seeing if there's anything related to communication or language, I'm like, yes, they're here for it. But personally, I study what humans are doing because like you can talk to them and you can understand what they're saying and they can tell you what they mean. Whereas mushrooms are like, ow, you're poking me. You know what I mean? Not like actually.
And it's just
very different scientific process.
Exactly, like pulse, 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 or like pulse, 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 which means something different, I guess.
Yeah.
So
it's like that one part in Arrival where they have all the little circles that the aliens are doing. And Jeremy Renner is like doing something with Amy Adams and they're at a computer.
you know,
great movie.
It's a great. When it first came out, people were like, "Is that what you do?" And I'm like, "Do I talk to aliens? Is that what you think that I do for my job?" No, but I try to talk to mushrooms. I could do that. They're like alien little creatures, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not alien. There we go.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I love that. Thank you so much. We had some really great stuff today. A lot of just weird little guys, you know,
Yeah.
in the animal kingdom, in the fungal kingdom. Erica, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you on.
Absolutely. It's been so much fun.
Would you remind listeners where they can find you to learn more about both how humans talk and also, you know, just stuff related to communicating?
How I talk. Ooh. You can find me anywhere that Other Words is showing. So that'll be, it's a PBS Digital Studios show. It's on YouTube on the Story channel, and it's also on pbs.org. And then the Crash Course we talked about earlier is on YouTube on Crash Course. And on social media, I am just my name, at Erica Brzozowski.
The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week is produced by all of our hosts, including me, Rachel Feltman, along with Jess Bodie, who also serves as our audio engineer and editor extraordinaire. Our theme music is by Billy Cadden. Our logo is by Katie Beloff. If you have questions, suggestions, or weird stories to share, tweet us at weirdest_thing. Thanks for listening, weirdos.